Hey folks, welcome to The Photography Guy. And if you subscribe, thank you very much for subscribing to this new channel. And if you're not, please hit that subscribe button and you're going to find a lot of great content here on photography. Today we're working with Lightroom. Now, Lightroom, this happens to be let me bring this up here for you, version 5.7.1. It's not the newest version of Lightroom, but it does everything I need to do, and sometimes we just don't need to upgrade. Especially now that they made it a subscription model, from what I understand, so you're paying yearly, just like they do for their Photoshop. So I'm sticking with just the regular old version of Lightroom. I've used this for years, and I enjoy it, and it works. What we're talking about today is we are talking about selective exposure. You can see on this train ride, this happens to be in St. Kitts. It was on a cruise we went on with Carnival Cruise Lines. I recommend Carnival Cruise Lines. And I recommend if you ever go to St. Kitts to take this train ride. It was a remarkable day. We had a great time. They are great people. You get free drinks on the ride. It's really a good time. But I took this photograph, and you can see here where the railing, the people's arms, and the train is, pretty well, and I would even say really well exposed. The exposure shot there was good. The exposure on the foreground is good. But sometimes what happens in a photograph is you'll end up blowing out some of your sky. And it happens a lot, and it's, if we're not using flash to expose for the brighter sky, then we can use flash, and we'll get into that in another day. But what we're going to talk about here is how to do some selective exposure in Lightroom. Now you can see here, if I take this temperature right now and I drop this temperature down, you can see where I can make the whole entire scene cooler. If you double click one of these sliders, it'll bounce back to 0. If I want to drop the exposure on the sky, I can make the sky bluer, but look what it's doing. It's underexposing the whole entire scene. We don't want that to happen. The same happens with highlights. If I drop my highlights down, it's going to drop the highlights down for the whole entire photograph. Again, not what I want. So what we're going to do is we are going to go up and we are going to use the brush tool. Now the brush tool will allow me to select certain areas of the photograph and be able to paint on this photograph. I am using a Wacom Graphire tablet. This happens to be the Graphire 3. It's an older tablet, but again, it works for me. I don't need to upgrade it, and I'm very happy with it. I've used it for years. So we are going to go and we're going to start working and painting in the sky. What I would recommend you do first is, if you hit this 1:1, you can see over on the left, we have this little square box. That box allows us to move around the photograph. But what it allows us to do even more so is it allows us to work on selected areas of the photo. It blows it up for us, and it's just easier for me to see what I'm painting on. I'm going to start here. I'm going to raise my brush size just a little bit, just using the left or right bracket key. The right bracket key makes it larger. The left bracket key makes your brush smaller. And I'm just going to start painting on this photograph. So I'm just painting a little bit. You can see where it's starting to get a little darker. Now what I like to do, once I get an area started, this is when I go over and I start playing with my sliders. So the temperature, we're going to take it to the left and cool that down just a little bit. You can see where it's getting bluer. Look, if I go all the way to the left, you'll make it too blue, right? Too cool. It's cooling it down there. So we're just going to cool it just a little bit. Just about that much. The exposure, we can drop the exposure just a little bit. You got to watch because you don't want to make it look too fake, right? So we can just drop this down just by a little bit. Right about there. And we can play with these more when we're done, but this is just a nice starting point for me. And the saturation you can bring up just a little bit. You can see once you start getting more saturation, you may want to start bringing your exposure back up a little bit. Right about there. Okay. Once we got that done, I'm going to just start going in and filling in my sky. And I'm not going to go over the clouds. I just want to basically get the sky filled in. You may want a larger brush because that makes it a little easier, right? It doesn't take us as much time. And again, we're just going through here. This is Lightroom, so it's just a nice edit to do in Lightroom. And I do this kind of stuff before I ever go to the editor. I am going to eventually here, I'm going to do a follow-up video, and we're going to also do the same type of edit in Photoshop Elements. And I'm going to show you a way to do it in Photoshop Elements. But if you have Lightroom and these tools are here, we are in the developer mode. If you see the top on here, there's the library mode. That's where we do most of our cataloging, well, all of our cataloging. I am in developer mode. Developer mode is what allows you to edit. That gives you editing tools. You can already see now how we are changing the sky from being it wasn't really blown out. I wouldn't say it was blown out. I just think it was a little bit overexposed, and I wanted to just drop the exposure a little bit is what I want to do here. So it'll allow me to play around a little bit with it and clean it up a little bit. Because I love this shot, and this is a shot that I'm actually planning on having sent out, and I'm going to have it on canvas. So, I want to clean it up a little bit before I do so. We always want to get that wow factor with our photos, folks. We want to be able to allow people to see these photographs and say, wow, that's really cool, that looks really nice. So, and I always say when I teach editing, people weren't there. And if they weren't there, they don't know really what the scene looked like. But I'm sure this is what the scene looked like. But the camera just it was exposing for the foreground. And we got too much, a little bit too much overexposure on the background. And that does happen from time to time. I'm trying to do this quick. I don't want to keep you here all day learning this edit. Just lowering my brush size down a little bit. Now, when you get to the edge over there, you're like, okay, well, that looks pretty good. But remember, we moved this to 1:1, so we have to move this box over to the right. And when we move over to the right, we can finish up down here. And I believe that all those years we spent in elementary school or kindergarten learning to color within the lines, this is kind of what they were teaching it for us. So we'll learn one day how to properly paint on our pictures. I'm just throwing some little exposure in there. So you're basically painting on exposure is what you're doing. We're not painting any color on here. We're just painting on exposure. Raise my brush size up here a little bit. A little bit smaller down here. And you can use this brush tool, folks. You can have multiple areas where you're brushing. So it's going to be multiple selections. And I'll show you how to select those once you do so. And be able to work with each individual section. I'll do one other section here. Not this big. Obviously, the sky is the largest part that I'm working on today. Anywhere we see sky, we may want to just color in there a little bit. Not color again. Expose in there. Change the exposure a little bit. Trying not to get too much on the tree itself. There we go, something like that. All right. And then up through here. In there, a little bit inside that tree right there. Again, this is something when you come home and you're editing your photos. Naturally, I can't just jump on a plane and fly back out to St. Kitts. Not that I wouldn't want to. I think it's a wonderful island. The people there are extremely friendly. All right, so once we get all that done, looking up through here on the top, looks pretty good. Looks good down here. Maybe just a little drop the exposure in them trees are a little bit. Once you get it all done, go back and look at your full photograph. So you want to go back up to the navigator and hit Fit. Fit will put that photograph back in here. Okay, so we can actually see it once again. All right. Now you can see that we have that sky all colored in or exposed. Now we can go over and we can play with these sliders some more. You can play with the tint maybe a little bit. There's one slider I always love to use. It's clarity. Clarity will actually blend the sky. It will blend anything, actually. It'll even blend faces. I use this sometimes when I touch up a photograph or a portrait. And you can see now where we have that all set up, right? Now, if you click on the brush tool, Now we can work on the full photograph again. So maybe your exposure on the full photograph, you want to bring it up. But be very careful because look, now we're affecting the sky again. Double click it and put that back. So let's say if you wanted another brush point. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to add another brush tool for another area. So if I click on the brush tool again, you can hit New. And now we're going to start painting on these trees down here. You can see as soon as we do that, there's a new marker. All right. So that new marker is showing us that we have a new area that we can work with. So we're just going to go over the top of these trees because they seem a little bit overexposed. Once we did the sky, it's just the top of these trees. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I just want to do this hillside here. Again, you go over now. We can adjust our temperature. No, I think we're going to just drop our exposure down on those trees a little bit right there. You can see now where we're just working on the trees. And if you get a little spill, this does happen. If you see what I mean by spill, the brush went over top and got into that sky a little bit. So I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to hit the erase tool. And now right here where the overspill is, we're just going to erase it a little bit. Right in there, okay? So we just over erased the spill just a little bit. And we were able to take that back out of there. Now if you want to go back and work on the sky, all we have to do is simply go up and click on that dot. And you can see where it's selected now, the sky. That's what you're working on. So if you make a change now with the sky, see here, we are on A. We're going to just go back over the area there. Right here, a little bit. Drop the exposure just a little bit. Oh, not over the whole sky there. Just bring that up a little bit. But you can see now where we can have multiple selections. So now we're back working on this tree line again. And again, you can bring the temperature up maybe there a little bit. Bring your tint. And now you can see where the tree line is not overexposed any longer. So it allows you to do multiple selection points is what I'm showing you. And you can use multiple brushes and select certain areas. It's very easy to do in Lightroom. So it's just a nice little trick I wanted to show you. Hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. And I'm sure that, just play around with Lightroom. So many of you and so many people out there have emailed me and said, look, Jack, why, I use Lightroom to organize my photos, but in Photoshop Elements, I have the organizer. It does the same thing. Lightroom is the organizer on steroids because it does all this extra little editing stuff that you can do in here and touch your photographs up. So if you enjoyed this video, and if you're not subscribed to this channel, please click on the subscribe button. I'd love to hear your comments and what you have to say if you use Lightroom or not. And I will talk to you next time. Until then, keep those shutters clicking, keep your editors editing. I'll see you later. Bye-bye for now.